friends, so today we're going to be drawing and painting plum blossoms on this paper hand fan here. If you want to see how it's done, keep watching. So this is the second of the 3 hand fans I picked up from Daiso, Japan, and I picked them up from one of the shopping arcades in Osaka. And I've tried to find similar fans online, like blank similar fans, and I've not had a lot of luck, but I also haven't done a lot of digging. So these might be the only 3 fans I do. And in my other video, I painted cherry blossoms for you guys. So this time I'm going to paint plum blossoms, which might even be cuter than cherry blossoms. So the materials I'm going to use, I have 3 colored lead pens here. I have pink, red, and purple, since plum blossoms are kind of a hot pink. And I've also got my MozArt Komorebi watercolors. Cut open, show you guys. If you're interested in a full review of the Komorebi watercolors, you guys can check out this card here. My only issue is it has a really big footprint because the hinged lid doesn't come off. So it actually takes up a lot of space. I have to prop it up somewhere. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to sketch my design on the fan. So I've got to bring up my reference. And I think I'm going to start with pink. And then add details darker. And I want really, I know plum blossoms can kind of vary in intensity, but I want plum blossoms that are really, really pink and are really gonna stand out. I'm gonna do them much bigger than the cherry blossoms, just so that we don't end up with 3 fans that are a little too similar. And I'm gonna start with kind of a strong focal. These Daiso hand fans are surprisingly easy to work with. I wouldn't say just sort of take them for granted, because they definitely can have their own challenges, but they're much easier to work with than I expected. And I know some artists can begin just by painting, and I think that's fantastic. That's not me. I can't do that. I think it's great that you can. I cannot. So for all those other artists here who have to kind of sketch it out, even if it's sort of a simple design, I'm here with you. I've got you. And I'm sort of pulling reference from several reference photos. Because the goal, unless you're doing a realistic illustration, the goal isn't to just copy what you see. The goal is to transform it and interpret it. So even for simple things like this, it's good to try and take it a step further. And since the cherry blossom one is really full of images, I'm going to leave the plum blossom one a little more simple. So this is the design we have so far. My next step is to start tightening it and adding details with my other colors. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin painting our plum blossoms. And for that, I'm gonna grab some hyacinth violet, some cerise, and some carmine, because we want those intensely hot pink blossoms. And we learned when we painted the cherry blossoms that these go down really, really light. I'm also gonna grab some ultramarine because let's not kid ourselves. We know what we're going to be doing in the background. And I think this is going to be predominantly carmine. Now, if I had opera pink, that would be great to mix in as well. Opera pink is light fugitive, but it's not as fugitive as some of the neons, which are dye-based in this set. And I'm trying to stay away, even though the neon pink would probably be a really good base in this, I'm trying to kind of stay away from using the neon. And I want these plum blossoms to be visually different from the cherry blossoms at a glance. We're also going to need to mix up a color for the branch in the background. And I want to learn a lesson from the mistake I made on the cherry tree. So I'm going to go for burnt umber, Payne's gray, and a little bit of violet. I'm going to give the plum blossoms a little bit of chance to dry, but I can go ahead and mix my colors. One of the nice things about Gansai Tambi style watercolors is that they activate almost immediately. So you can begin mixing your colors a little quicker than waiting for Western style watercolors to activate. I did notice though that when painting the cherry blossoms, my brown kind of sedimented out and I never really was able to remix it, but that was after a few hours. So it was less of a priority. I feel like this is gonna be dry enough for me to go ahead and start. So that brown is really light for what I want. So I'm gonna try mixing some. Really concentrated, since this paper seems to benefit from a more origami style approach, I guess, where you're working all your colors really thick. I do want to leave some of the highlights. So the intention isn't to cover the whole thing. And I'm going to try to do sort of what I did with the cherry blossoms, except then not ruin it. Basically, I'm going to try to learn from my mistakes with the cherry blossoms. I mentioned this in the cherry blossom video, but something I really like about the Komorebi set is that you can take the pans out, but unlike with the Gansai Tambi set, where the pans are kind of loose and likely to you basically have to tape that thing shut. With this, that large case, which does sometimes get in the way, holds the pans pretty securely, so you don't have to tape it shut or anything like that. I think that looks pretty good. And then there was a plum blossom I'd initially missed, so I'll go ahead. Then I'm gonna go get a clean cup of water so we can work with that ultramarine. Now that that layer's dry, I'm gonna mix up an even darker. And I'm just mixing it directly into my wells. So brown, Payne's gray, and a little bit of violet. Could even go a bit of violet. The tines on the fan actually make it a little more difficult to pull a straight line casually. So, you need to make it a point not to be too fast or too sloppy. And then, while that dries, go ahead and prepare my ultramarine blue. Oh, this brush has a lot of white in it for some reason. And I want the blue on this one to be, the starting blue on this one to be a little darker than what I use for the cherry blossoms. That'll help give a little bit of visual difference. So once the paint on the branches is dry, I can go ahead and start filling the whole thing in with blue. So since this layer has dried, I'm going to go ahead and start painting in the background. I want to switch over to a larger brush. And just like we did with the cherry blossoms, we're going to start from the left and work to the right. Or if you're left-handed, you could start on the right and work to the left. Just prevents us from dragging our hands across wet paint. And I'm going to leave a little bit of a border. Now, to give this plenty of time to dry, because we just saturated the fan pretty thoroughly. So our first layer is dry, and I actually think I want to darken it in other areas, or a few select areas, just to help it sort of stand out a little bit from the cherry blossom one. I'm mixing a little bit of ultramarine, a little more concentrated, kind of off to the side. And I'm just sort of mixing it in with the original color we mixed, so that we're getting a little bit more of a blended transition now. This isn't a watercolor paper, at least not the way I normally think of them. So it's not really going to retain water for me. Pretty much the water you have available for mixing and blending is what's on the surface of the paper. Although it takes a little getting used to, I think it's actually a lot of fun to paint on. And I also like sort of the softer sort of feeling it has in terms of like how your paints look on the paper. I mean, in order to get like vibrant colors, you really have to layer them on kind of thick. So I honestly have no idea how this will look, whether it'll look good or bad. The only way I'm going to know is after it's dried. And if you're doing something like this, you just want to be careful to not oversaturate the paper too much, because the glue that holds the fan together, there's a possibility that it'll just kind of give up the ghost. Right now it's got kind of one of those high late winter skies, you know, where it's really, really blue and there are a few soft little clouds, sort of that dappled look. And I like that. Hopefully that's how it looks when it's dry, right? Alright, I think I'm gonna like how that turns out. Definitely interesting, because I'm not familiar enough with this paper that I feel confident guessing how it's gonna look when it's dry. Kind kind of a surprise, which is fun. Yeah, I really like how the sky turned out in this. It's got kind of a soft, hazy, mottled effect. And I use just a little bit more ultramarine, just as an accent. So I'm not even going to use it as much as I did in the cherry blossom one. Then, while that dries, I'm going to go in with yellow and start kind of marking off the centers. My end goals with the centers are to tighten everything up using an opaque yellow from the Holbein Shingansai palette. And also to probably use a little bit of fine tech gold just to like make it kind of special. So now it's finally time to get back into those plum blossoms. And the ones that I referenced are actually really cute. They remind me a lot of, or rather I can see where the Kanzashi get their shape from, because they have kind of a curled petal and they've got kind of a double ring of petals. So I wanna, since I really like that design, I want to kind of do my best to preserve it. Then we have a cute little bud. We actually have many cute little buds, but this cute little bud in particular, plain favorites. And I'm definitely gonna have to work more saturated than this, because this is probably not gonna dry dark enough. So since I'm gonna want a darker color for the plum blossoms, I'm gonna start with the wash we mixed first. Then I'm gonna grab some cerise and some red violet. And this should hopefully make it a little bit more of a hotter pink. And some are dry, so I'm gonna go ahead and start adding a little more detail to some of the larger open blossoms. I'm going to try and tighten up my blossoms a little bit by using the cerise color, so it's like a pink kind of violet color, I guess. Kind of ink in some of my details. And I'm not trying to define every little, bump. I'm not going for realism here. I mean, we're painting a fan after all. You could totally go for realism on a fan. Just, that's not the point of these. For me, these are not the point of these for me. So I'm kinda just sort of accentuating just enough details so that you can hopefully kind of tell what the forms are doing. And then for some, I want these center petals a little bit darker. Oh, fortunately, just got on my hand. Then I'm gonna wanna pick a green for the leaves. So I'm gonna start with a very cool yellow. There's actually a lot of red in my brush, so I want to get that out. And I'm just sort of freehand sketching leaf shapes using that yellow. And as you guys can see, over the ultramarine blue, it's already got kind of a greenish tint. So next I'm going to go in, not even really waiting for these to dry, with an olive green. Then with grass green, which is already a pretty dark green. And then I have turquoise, although I think this will probably be dark enough for most. Which adds just a little bit of blue into the leaves. So it kind of does a better job kind of indicating shadow. Then I'm going to go in with a warmer yellow. I'm going to work on the centers a little bit. So next up, we're going to use the Holbein Shingansai. Let me show you guys the yellow one. These are slightly opaque to opaque watercolors. This is not necessarily their usual use, but I'm kind of hoping if I can get it concentrated enough. There we go. Get a little bit of, a little pop of yellow, a little bit better definition here on the centers of these plum blossoms. And then when that dries, I have some P.H. Martin's bleed proof white. You can also use opaque, any kind of opaque white, so gouache, Copic opaque white, anything like that, to sort of add some finishing details before we pull out the shimmer. And I'm just using the white to do a few details here and there. And then I'm going to use it to pull a little bit of a highlight on some of these blossoms. And bleed proof white has a screw tight lid. It is not airtight though, so you may want to sort of reconstitute it with water. It really doesn't take a whole lot. And I like to use it with a synthetic brush. I find that the stiffer bristles just stand up to sort of this stiff. It's almost like working with acrylic. Bleed proof white becomes kind of waterproof after, and you can paint on top of it and you can kind of marker on top of it. But it's really good for doing like corrections on your comic pages. I prefer it to whiteout, although I know there are people who use whiteout. I use it kind of interchangeably with Copic opaque white. It's kind of whatever I have, whatever is cheaper on Amazon or cheaper at Jerry's will usually be the one that I get. And they both have fairly fast dry times, but they do have dry time, so It's not immediate or instantaneous. You definitely should be careful when you're working across it the way I am, not to like pick up any from another area and kind of mono print it across your piece. Yeah, I definitely think I've learned something since painting the cherry blossom fan. Learned a couple new tricks. Maybe a little bit of restraint. Speaking of restraint though, I'm about to lose that because out come the Fine Tech pearlescent watercolors. It's one of those things that people are like, oh, you're not going to use that. Every day of my life, I will. Every day. And like with the cherry blossom fan, I'm just doing enough so that it'll catch the light and kind of shimmer if someone were to fan themselves with it. And I'm also going to do a little bit on the leaves. Using that restraint thing, I'm just going to add a little bit to the plum blossoms as well. This one isn't going to be quite as shimmery as the cherry blossom one. So see, a little bit of restraint. Cherry blossom one is super shimmery though. What I'm doing is I'm holding it up and kind of seeing how it catches the light. Now I'm going to grab a little bit of white, because since these are hand fans, I want them to feel rewarding to use, if that makes sense. So like, you know, your eyes catch the shimmer and it kind of leads your eye around the blossoms and around the petals is the goal. Alright, I think this one's finished. So I'm gonna let it dry and then I'm gonna slip it back into the bag it came in, and that'll help protect it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and helping me paint these plum blossoms on this simple Daiso hand fan. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helped inspired or, I don't know, sparked something in you that you can use today to make something of your own. If you're looking for more watercolor tutorials, look no further. This channel has many, many watercolor tutorials. And if you're looking for something a little more in-depth, head on over to natosoup.blogspot.com for my watercolor basics series. If you enjoy my watercolor art, why not check out my watercolor webcomic? You can find 7-inch Kara for free at 7inchkara.com or 7inchkara.tumblr.com. Content like this is made possible thanks to the generosity of my dear art nerds on Patreon. If you're interested in learning how to join the art nerd community, head on over to patreon.com/natosoup. So I hope to see you guys again really soon. We're going to be painting clover on the last hand fan. So have a great day, guys. Bye.